Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly unbelievable 40-year saga of crime, deep-rooted political protection, and a genuinely shocking climax that played out right on live television. We're going to dissect the anatomy of a mafia empire, specifically the rise and the very abrupt, violent end of Atiq Ahmed. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this story, we actually have to start at the very end with a pretty chilling quote. "If they didn't take us, we didn't go." Those were the fatalistic, final words spoken by Atiq Ahmed. It was the night of April 15, 2023. He was handcuffed, walking into a hospital for a routine medical checkup, completely surrounded by cameras and reporters. A journalist had literally just asked him why he wasn't at his son's funeral. He offered that defeated reply. And then, just a split second later, history was made on live TV. Okay, let's dive into exactly what went down. It's 10 p.m. at Colvin Hospital in Prayagraj. Three young men, posing as journalists with fake press IDs and microphones, completely bypass a heavy police cordon. In exactly 9 seconds, they fire 18 rounds. 9 bullets hit Atiq, 4 hit his brother Ashraf. And just like that, a 40-year reign of terror is extinguished. But, how does a man warrant such a dramatic, high-profile execution in the first place? Well, to understand that, we have to rewind the clock. Part 1, 1979. From coal thief to gangster. The story of Atiq Ahmed begins not with grand political schemes, but in the poverty of old Allahabad, where a 17-year-old school dropout's ambition quickly turned deadly. Things escalated so fast. He went from petty theft to extorting railway contractors in no time. But the real turning point happens in 1986. The state implemented its very first Gangster Act to curb rising crime, and Atiq was booked under it. The police picked him up, took him to a secret location, and honestly, everyone thought he was going to be killed in an encounter. But then, a phone call comes in from a powerful politician in Delhi, straight into the Allahabad police chief's cabin. The message was super simple. That boy is ours, nothing should happen to him. By that afternoon, Atiq was walking free. And that was the exact moment he realized something crucial. To permanently evade the law, you have to become the lawmaker. Which brings us to this fascinating clash of generations. You've got Chand Baba, the established, old-school Don who ruled entirely by street fear and throwing bombs at police stations, up against Atiq, his incredibly ambitious, dangerous protege. In the 1989 elections, Chand Baba decided to run for the assembly seat. Atiq, feeling sidelined, filed his own nomination as an independent against his own mentor. Sensing defeat, Chand Baba sent his armed gang to a local dhaba to eliminate Atiq. But Atiq was ready for it. In the massive shootout that followed, Atiq gunned down his mentor right in the street. Within a week, Atiq's men wiped out the rest of Chand Baba's gang. And Atiq, well, he won the election. He was now a formal member of the Legislative Assembly. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of his power once he secured a formal political title. By the early 90s, he wasn't just some local thug. He commanded a private army of over 120 sharpshooters. Think about what that means for a local economy. He completely monopolized the railway scrap contracts through pure, unadulterated terror. Literally nobody else even dared to submit a tender form. Part 2. Systemic subversion and political protection. Throughout the 90s, political shields emboldened this gang to unprecedented levels, proving these men viewed democracy as something they could simply crush under their boots. But perhaps nothing highlights his absolute control over the state machinery quite like the 1996 Ashok Sahu murder cover-up. It's a crazy story. Step 1. Atiq's brother Ashraf murders a prominent businessman in broad daylight. Step 2. The police go to arrest Ashraf, but when they check the official records, they're completely stunned. The records show Ashraf is currently locked up in a jail in Chandali. He's got an airtight alibi? But then, Step 3 reveals the terrifying truth. Atiq had completely bought out the prison system. He had a paid proxy sitting in a jail cell, answering to Ashraf's name during roll call, while the real Ashraf was out on the streets committing murder. I mean, think about why this matters. The institution meant to protect citizens was actually actively harboring the criminals. But, as we know, the political winds in Uttar Pradesh are always shifting. In 2002, Mayawati's BSP government took power. Remembering past violent clashes with Atiq's gang, the new administration initiated a massive crackdown. 113. In a single day, over 113 criminal cases were registered against Atiq, and a fierce, uncorruptible police officer was put right on his tail. Now, what's really interesting about this next event is how Atiq responded to all that pressure. In August 2002, while Atiq was attending a hearing at the Allahabad High Court, a massive bomb went off in the courtyard. Cops were bleeding, total chaos erupted. Atiq immediately ran to the media, claiming the police and the government were trying to assassinate him. It was a brilliant, calculated play for public sympathy. But investigators eventually arrested a man who confessed the truth. The bombing was the very definition of a false flag. It was actually orchestrated by Atiq and his own father just to frame the police and ease the pressure on his gang. Part 3. The Peak of Terror and a Fatal Mistake. By 2004, Atiq reached his absolute peak, winning a seat in parliament. But vacating his local MLA seat for his brother would turn out to be his fatal mistake. To everyone's total shock, his brother Ashraf lost that by-election to a young, fearless BSP candidate named Raju Pal. Atiq just couldn't handle the blow to his ego. He knew if his brother could be defeated, the aura of fear keeping his entire empire alive would shatter. So in January 2005, Atiq shooters cornered Rajupal's car in a crowded market. They fired 19 bullets into him with AK-47s in broad daylight. For 5 kilometers, as desperate supporters rushed Paul to the hospital, the shooters literally chased them, firing continuously, and not a single police officer dared to intervene. Murdering a sitting MLA was a bridge too far, and it really marked the start of his long decline. By 2007, Mayawati returned to power with a full majority and immediately seized his assets, forcing the once untouchable Don to hide out in a Delhi flat until his eventual arrest. But here's an incredibly surprising fact. He was actually briefly let out of jail in 2008 simply because the ruling coalition needed every single vote in parliament to pass the US-India nuclear deal. But Atiq betrayed them, voted against the party line, and was expelled. His political armor was officially gone. The landscape shifted permanently in 2017. The new Yogi Adityanath government announced a strict zero-tolerance policy on organized crime. The chief minister famously declared on the assembly floor, "We will mix the mafia in the dust." The government launched Operation Clean, aggressively bulldozing over 70 crore rupees, that's roughly $8.5 million worth of Atiq's illegal properties. Part 4. Operating from the Shadows, the Final Hubris. Because decades of absolute power breeds deep, deep hubris, Atiq believed he was still the undisputed king, even from behind bars. Which leads us to one of the most genuinely jaw-dropping incidents in this entire story. In 2018, Atiq's men kidnapped a prominent Lucknow businessman named Mohit Jaiswal. But they didn't take him to some hidden safe house, no. They drove him directly inside the Doria prison. Jail officials were fully complicit. Inside the prison walls, Atiq and his goons brutally beat Jaiswal until he literally signed over properties worth millions. When state institutions fail this spectacularly, it sparks national outrage. And that outrage finally forced the Supreme Court to intervene, ruling that Atiq couldn't be safely kept anywhere in Uttar Pradesh, so they shipped him off to a high-security jail in Gujarat. Let's move to 2023 and see how this rapid unraveling builds to the climax. Sitting in that Gujarat jail in early 2023, Atiq orchestrated one last hit to silence Umesh Paul, the prime witness in that 2005 Rajupal murder. The hit was caught entirely on CCTV, sparking a massive state crackdown, and the unraveling from there was dizzying. In March, Atiq received his first-ever life sentence. In April, the state task force killed his son, Assad, who was one of the shooters in the Umesh Paul murder, in an encounter. The Mafia Don who used to arrogantly twirl his mustache in court was suddenly weeping in the back of a police van. Part 5. The circle closes. Unsolved secrets. We're back to April 15, 2023. The hospital courtyard. 18 bullets. 40 years of fear erased in exactly 9 seconds. But before we wrap up, there's an ultimate, chilling twist buried in the investigative charge sheets. This local coal thief turned politician had evolved into a massive national security threat. The documents revealed deep cross-border connections. Atiq's gang was receiving weapons dropped by drones over Punjab, coordinated by Pakistan's ISI and the terror group Lashkar-e-Taiba. These were military-grade arms, routed directly to Atiq to spill blood on local streets. So the crucial point is this. Atiq Ahmed was a man who knew exactly where all the bodies were buried, both literally and politically. During his final interrogations, he had actually threatened to expose the dark secrets of powerful politicians, corrupt bureaucrats, and wealthy builders who had utilized his services for decades. Which leaves us with a final, lingering, provocative thought. Were those 3 young shooters really just trying to make a name for themselves?
Or were they merely pawns sent to ensure that the absolute darkest secrets of the system went to the grave with Atiq Ahmed? It's a massive question that still hangs in the air today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.